When you hear the term coming of age tale, what comes into your mind? Some spunky teen getting into trouble and then growing as a person, right? Something like Great Expectations, maybe, if you're into classic literature. Or something along the lines of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, maybe The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles. Right. All of these follow the same basic idea, but what else do they all have in common? What's the one thing that almost all good coming-of-age tales share? They don't have a sequel. American Pie may have 4-something sequels, and it's technically a coming-of-age tale, but if anything, that proves my point that the good ones do it once. I don't care if you think American Pie is funny. I don't. I also don't think American Pie is really an example of storytelling at its finest. Seriously though, I can't think of an actually good or true-to-life coming-of-age tale in either film or video games that has a sequel. It's not impossible to have a decent sequel, I just don't know of any. For those of you that can read, you already know this video is primarily a video essay on The Last of Us Part 2. If you were able to discern that from the title, that means you're of average intelligence. Congratulations, and thank you for giving me something to work with here. My name is Gray, and my parents view me as a failure, so to compensate, I'm going to try and knock some of my ideas around for you guys. Welcome to an essay on the common issues with a coming-of-age tale in today's world, The Last of Us Part 2, and how it can overcome them, as well as various other pitfalls of the gaming community. Yes. I know that's a really wordy and pretentious title. I did that on purpose. It's also all over the place, so it should give you a pretty good idea on how well structured this essay is. It's not super important though. What is important is that all of my opinions in this are just that. Opinions. They're all subjective. If I'm making a point that's objective, which I will, I'm gonna make it clear. Right, so with that out of the way, I really love the game, and I am excited for the sequel. And I mean really, really love. Probably too much. I just want to make it clear that I'm going to be approaching this with a lot of passion. I have a lot to cover in half an hour, so I'm just going to get to it. So, a close friend of mine kind of recently suggested that I watch the trailer for the sequel to her favorite video game of all time. The highly praised The Last of Us. If the cave you live in doesn't have Wi-Fi, or if you're just really behind like I was, this game is revered by millions as one of the best stories told in the 21st century through the medium of video games. It was a feat of both technology and unorthodox storytelling in an age where, in the gaming industry at least, everything is accepted as long as it's acceptable. That's actually a really heavy statement that I think about a lot, but I'm not unboxing it in this video. Naughty Dog showed a gameplay demonstration at this past E3 that proved that they wish to continue to show the others how shit's done. 11 minutes of gameplay weaved seamlessly with in-game cutscenes that left a lot of people scrambling to pick up their jaws. The graphics look stunning, and the gameplay looks immersive and interesting, if nothing else. There are, however, many worries that I have about this game that keep me up at night. While the first game was really exceptional, the second installment will have a very difficult time reaching those same heights. To be as transparent as possible, I have not finished playing the first game yet. I only bought it after my friend spiked my interest a few months ago. Naughty Dog's magnum opus did interest me on its release, but I was young and didn't have the money or drive to get the required hardware. However, I know the story and I've experienced more than enough gameplay to make a fair judgment. For the sake of clarity in this video though, I did have to spoil the story for myself. As I said, I haven't finished the game yet, so in order to be able to write this on my flight back home from New York, I had to read up on the final chapters of the story. I hope you can appreciate that. One of the most important things about The Last of Us is the raw emotion and weight its story carries. It can be translated into essentially any medium and still be a heavy hitter. It's either making you smile as Ellie and Joel bond over a giraffe, or forcing you to break down into a mess of tears and snot over the choices the two are forced to make. Yes, I did cry while playing this game. No, I'm not less of a man for admitting it. I do, however, intend to finally finish it when I get the chance. The point here is that the story alone is more than enough to keep someone interested, as it's more of a cinematic adventure than anything else. I'm going to continue talking about the game and its strengths in just a second, but first let me quickly explain the issue with the coming-of-age tale, as it's the first thing that's mentioned in the title. It's a time-tested classic. A young and impressionable protagonist who is likable despite their obvious social shortcomings and awkwardness or some other flaw begins a journey of self-discovery. They go through trials of character and often have to deal with suffering, but the story ends with a person being reborn in a way, ready and equipped to take on the hardships of their inhabited world. It's a story that's been told a million times, a million different ways. The problem with making a story like this is that the whole story is built on the development of the characters and their relationships. Everything else can be considered background noise or just plot devices to help further said character development. In the entertainment industry, it is nothing to laugh at when you create something really impressive. It's actually insanely hard to make a good original game or film. So, of course, when you manage to catch lightning in a bottle, for this instance we'll use The Last of Us as an example, there is a huge push from the industry and the community to make more. The industry sees a chance at making more money with less risk. Not having to come up with an entirely new idea means they have the cushion of the last story's success. The community will want to return to the world that they fell in love with and revisit the characters and locations. This isn't actually a problem that only affects the coming-of-age tale, actually. The same general rule applies to really just about any story or idea that was meant to have an end, but was continued for the sake of money and crowd-pleasing. I'm looking at you, Star Wars. That's right. The idea loses its charm. In the case of a story as amazing as The Last of Us, destroying the originality of the game by making another risks ruining the whole idea, everything that made it special. If the second game sucks, it's likely because it was riding off of the success of the first one, without actually bringing anything new or interesting to the table. I'm not saying there's no way to continue the story, just hear me out. There are tons of ways that the story can continue, it's just not looking easy. The chances that we'll end up feeling shallow in comparison to whatever came before it are pretty high. Any development risks feeling forced, or may just not carry as much power as the development in the original. Look at games like Killzone or Destiny. The stories are really, really boring. Unless you're a kind of guy who just wants to keep hitting the same button over and over again in order to watch the bad guy's head go boom. Good stories need some sort of arc. Someone needs to start somewhere and end up somewhere else in a different state. That's only one basic ingredient, though. There needs to be a ton of other stuff as well, but I'm not going to explain the difference between an objectively good and bad story. The reason I think coming-of-age tales are so good, especially The Last of Us, is because of the development of the characters. As I said earlier, the whole story is often literally built around this growth. The Last of Us is a great example of the coming-of-age tale done right. It's essentially a sweet and heartwarming tale of growth, set in an apocalyptic world plagued by fungal zombies and murderous humans. While I'll give it to you that this isn't a new or exciting idea on paper, it's executed brilliantly. Interesting twists such as the zombies' blindness or the spores spreading the virus give the so-called clickers a new and interesting dimension, which just adds to the game. And the characters are all truly interesting. Not one single side character or main character is dull or one-dimensional. They all have realistic traits and flaws that make them feel human. The most interesting thing to me, however, is that it's not just one, but two main characters who come of age. Ellie is obviously one of the two. She's introduced as an awkward and uncomfortable young teenager who has an admittedly charming sense of humor and a very bad case of potty mouth. She's forced to work together with an old man named Joel, who, as you learn in the first moments of the game, loses his daughter during the initial outbreak. When the main events of the game start, he's a grizzled old man with a somewhat likable cynicism and strong Western Virginia accent. We watch as he has to bring Ellie to a place where she can be used to create a cure against his will. Initially, the two are clearly uncomfortable with each other, but a beautiful friendship forged in both fire and heartwarming moments of adorable awkwardness blossoms. It is grade A character development, and by the end, the two are so attached to each other that they repeatedly risk their lives for the sake of the other. By the end, Ellie is loudmouthed, yet impressively mature, displaying a better understanding of people and the interactions with them. She is also a brutally efficient killing machine. Her babysitter turned father figure Joel has found a foster daughter in Ellie, and it visibly heals him. The broken and heartless old man we saw before is now a caring man with a warmth to him. His love for Ellie becomes his driving force towards the end of the game. Here's an example, and it's a great one. At the end of the game, Joel, severely wounded and suffering from the crushing fear of losing another daughter, brutally and mercilessly slaughters a lot of people who were once on his side in order to save her. He is completely clouded by a murderous rampage as he heaves, pants, and grunts in what can only be described as a truly primal display of emotion with a gun. In his attempt to save her, he sacrifices everything he used to stand for, and potentially dooms the human race. It is a truly heart-wrenching and kind of warming ending to the story. The twist here is that the player is left unsure whether they've made the right choice and become better people, or maybe worse. Now that you're all caught up, the worry here is that the coming-of-age tale cannot really be repeated or continued once it is finished. The story was driven by the symbiotic growth of one person and healing of the other. Now that Ellie is older and Joel is either dead or hiding from some of his newer demons, i.e. single-handedly dooming his species, the story needs to take a new turn. Many people are worried that the story will suffer as there isn't much left to explore in the relationship between the two, which will lead to the story being a rinse-repeat of the first, as many sequels are these days. There is, however, an interesting idea that not only deserves to be explored, but could possibly save the game. It's an issue that's touched upon in the first installment, namely the concept of growing up in a wasteland where everything wants to kill you, and humanity is either clinging to the shambles of society or actively trying to destroy what's left of it, and how this would affect a child who is maturing. Seeing an older Ellie and how this affected her is important. Ellie did not have a normal childhood by anyone's standards. By the end of her adolescence, she is a brutal machine of murder and one-liners, exploring how torn she could be between what she has become so used to and what Joel wanted for her is, in my opinion anyway, the best way Naughty Dog can go. It was so clear that Joel did not want her to become a monster, and in the end, they both became monsters in a weird sort of way. Twisted versions of humanity that cling to their sanity and ideals held together in one piece only by their love for one another. This is what makes them so great as a duo. Now, Joel being the older of the two, and having actually lived during the pre-outbreak times, possesses, or at least should possess, a normal moral compass and ideals, which can be shown in contrast to Ellie as she callously murders masses. Yes, I know that Joel doesn't seem to follow his ideals or compass most of the time, but it's clear that he made the wrong choice by selfishly saving Ellie and dooming everyone else. And I think they both know that. Ellie may not be a child, but after all she's been through, she's definitely a broken person. If the story would have followed Joel trying to help her rebuild herself and acting as a foil to her character once again, while trying to keep his own hypocrisy and moral compass in check, while he hides from the fact that he destroyed the humans' chances of survival all by himself, it could be just as amazing as the first. There are other ways that you could go about the story, but I feel the best bet would be to continue exploring the relationship between Joel and Ellie, trying to watch the two of them repair each other. It's clear to me that that's the best way to avoid alienating the audience or boring them with unnecessary expansions and character development, like romance, for example. While it's nice, it doesn't really hold enough strength when compared to the last emotional journey we went through. Another important thing is that we've been told Ellie is driven by hatred in this game. Wow. That's cryptic. This could be hatred for those who killed her mother, which expands nicely on already existing source material, and could still work with the repairing of her character. It's a loose end from the previous game, and it would help to finish Ellie's journey and serve as a device as she becomes healed through her experiences and possibly Joel along the way. Another possibility is that Joel is dead. While it would certainly mess with our hearts, it would have potential as a beautiful tale of acceptance and reconciliation with one's past. It has been theorized that Joel appears as a ghost, sort of haunting Ellie, guiding her as a form her conscience is taken, as the rest of her is consumed by hatred for those who killed the only person who stayed with her through all of the shit. It's very possible that after all she has suffered through, and all she has lost, that the final straw of Joel's murder would drive her right over the edge, breaking her fragile mental state into smithereens. This would contribute to how broken she is, and still sort of allows Joel to be her guide in repairing herself. You get to watch her let go of him and try to come to terms with his loss. It's also worth mentioning that the original ending for The Last of Us included Joel dying, with Ellie comforting him as he just kind of, died. This basically means that the idea of Joel being killed off, while not something we really want, is not something we should just ignore. Okay, now that I've finished talking about the paths of the sequel, I'm gonna talk about something else. Hype culture. I don't want to do this. The Last of Us was highly anticipated and extremely well received, being one of the few true masterpieces to come from the medium. This makes hyping the second game really, really dangerous. The first game was a collection of so many aspects that went perfectly. Amazing voice acting and motion capture performances, a captivating soundtrack, beautiful story, graphics and mechanics that push the boundaries of the now obsolete PS3's capabilities to the limit. And gameplay that is enjoyable. I'm not gonna say great, it's not great, it's fun though. Recapturing all of these circumstances will be really, really hard. And seeing as the game was announced almost 2 years ago, the hyping up of Part 2 is still really strong, and will likely continue to grow as the game isn't even coming out until likely late 2019, or perhaps even 2020 if it gets delayed. This can lead to disappointment. If the community continues to expect something better than truly spectacular, their chances of being disappointed are extremely high. My opinions get way more cynical here, so buckle up. The consumerist ways that have kept this industry thriving during a time when I think it should really kind of not be doing so well is something that people really don't seem to catch on to. People will watch a trailer for something and immediately get excited for the end product that they know virtually nothing about. This is just dangerous and blatantly stupid. I'm not suggesting your reaction to the trailer for a game, or The Last of Us Part 2, should be, "It's gonna be trash and the gameplay is fake." I'm suggesting you exercise caution and don't allow yourselves to get fooled by the hype. Look at it carefully. Maybe even actually have a thought for yourself about it. Like, when I was watching the gameplay demo, I was really interested in how fluid and quick and realistic the game's combat animations were. That shit was impressive as hell. There were hardly any button prompts at all, and we saw Ellie use a large combination of approaches to murdering her enemies, such as stabbing one in the neck, using a machete to hack one's head off, and shanking one guy. Just 3 different melee kills. Now, all of this also happened as the player ducked and dodged swipes of hammers and bullets, and none of it looked janky at all. It was extremely fluid, and as I said, it's really impressive. Now, the question that popped into my head was, how is this possible and is this real? Are these various animations for the same basic actions, like assassinations in Halo 5 or glory kills in Doom? Or have they improved on the gameplay of the first? Maybe given you different button combinations that you can use to do a certain type of kill that might have various different animations for the same action? Maybe gameplay won't be taking a backseat this time. Or maybe it's even more so, with one button doing a million different brutal murders that are all pre-scripted. Regardless of the answer to these questions, it's become so common these days for players to believe everything they see and everything they're told without question. So much so that they allow themselves to be stung repeatedly by the same company. Destiny 2 and Bungie have been using the hype culture to get people excited for a DLC that is essentially recycled assets and ideas from the first game for $40. They successfully did this twice in a row already, and it is pretty likely that for their next release, they'll do the same. And, I mean, I know they're doing the same. This is... The new DLC is like $75, is not included in the season pass, and doesn't even have like an actual campaign. It's the Prison of Elders. It's Prison of Elders. You just do Prison of Elders again. That was not scripted. That was not intentional. No one stops to realize that after being shafted twice in a row, it's really, really unwise to just bend over again for the same company. Honestly, I highly doubt that Naughty Dog would attempt anything that shady or dishonest. They're a pretty respectable studio. They have a really impressive track record. I still recommend you exercise caution though. In this case, it's simply because the game may not be as spectacular as you want it to be. The Last of Us Part 2 has really big shoes that it needs to fill, and from my point of view, it's going to be really hard for it to live up to its name as the sequel to one of the best games ever made. Purely out of interest of enjoying the game as much as you can, I would advise to avoid getting your hopes up in order to avoid being disappointed. I, for one, hope that it will be as good as the first one, but in acknowledging the fact that replicating the success of one of, if not the best cinematic stories told in this decade or century, is a huge challenge. If it does turn out to be brilliant, I'm pleasantly surprised. If not, it's completely understandable, and I'm not left feeling disappointed and short of $90. Don't pre-order. The point I'm making with this last bit here is that you should wait until the game comes out and inform yourself about it once it does. Be careful with your money. Trailers aren't a safe way to tell if something is going to be good. They're designed to make the end product look amazing. Same can be said for almost any pre-release stuff shown by the company selling the product. We all know I'm thinking about you, No Man's Sky. Right, I think now I've said just about everything I wanted to. Now, as I said earlier, this is all out of passion. I really admire what Naughty Dog did with The Last of Us. I just really don't want to see it become another horse to beat money out of. Whatever. thanks for listening to me ramble on about video games and hype culture and consumerism and, well, coming of age tales for about half an hour. I don't really know enough about any of these things, but I made a video about it anyway, so we'll see how that goes. I've never done anything serious like this before, and I really don't know how my views are gonna be received. Feel free to let me know if you want me to make more serious stuff like this, because I actually really enjoy doing this kind of stuff. On that note, let me know what you guys think about all the hype stuff and industry in The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you just around the digital corner. Gray out. I'm gonna go drink myself to sleep.